Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name.
Former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, who recently received a letter from the FBI saying, be quiet about this. Kyle, welcome to the show. You're not following orders.
So, Kyle, you had some issues that brought you here as a whistleblower. Joining me now to discuss is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thanks for spending some time with us again. Joining me now is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Joining me now is a frequent guest of the show, former FBI special agent, whistleblower as well, Kyle Seraphin.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Right, we're lucky to have him with us today. He's Kyle Seraphin, a real whistleblower himself.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Why did you decide to become a whistleblower?
I just made a decision that this is America's information, it's not mine, and I'm not going to let the FBI steamroll me and my family.
Kyle Seraphin, he's a former FBI agent. He's the host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, Kyle. Great to have you back with us, sir.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kyle Seraphin.
Let's turn it over to two former FBI special agents turned whistleblowers who are holding the Bureau accountable, Steve Friend and Kyle Seraphin.
A brave FBI whistleblower who is a friend of our show, also Dan Bongino's. Kyle Seraphin. He's the host of something that strangely is called The Kyle Seraphin Show. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll call you later. We'll talk guns. We'll talk optics.
All right. Any update on your whistleblower situation?
No, I expect to be attacked for the foreseeable future.
Okay. At least you're realistic. Thanks so much, Kyle.
All right. Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, also host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast. Thanks as always, Kyle. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Perfect, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you for standing up for the truth, man. Thank you for coming on.
Steve, Kyle, you guys are great Americans, and it's an honor to have you on the program. Have a great weekend.
And follow him, Kyle Seraphin, with a PH on Twitter. God bless you, Kyle. This is
Well, so Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Great chatting with you.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
The 12th, I always have to look off to the side to make sure I've got the right day, because every day starts running together when you are fighting the federal government and the evils that are existing in this world. If your head is bobbing along to the opening song, that means you are listening to the musical stylings of my younger brother, Casey Seraphin. A happy 38th birthday to him yesterday. I didn't want to take away from the 9/11 solemnity that we were opening up with, but that is my brother's song, and he is a fantastic musician in his own right. And if you hear the opening every time, that's my father. This is a family affair here at the Kyle Seraphin Show. I've leaned on the talented members of my own clan to be able to put this thing together. We got a really interesting show for you today. We've got another live guest, so I think you guys are going to really enjoy that. If you've already seen the show notes, you know we're going to be talking to David Sumrall. But before we do that, I want to say thanks to the folks that make this Kyle Seraphin Show possible. I was literally walking upstairs and I looked over at my wife and I said, we are standing on both feet. She's breastfeeding a little tiny baby. We have a healthy family simply because these people have decided to support us, and against all odds, we are able to stand against our former employer and bring you guys information, bring you guys interesting guests, and make this microphone, this platform, something that did not even exist, and I didn't even fathom it when I was working for the FBI and decided to come forward with my story. So here we go. Let's say thanks, first of all, to our OG sponsors. These are the first ones that came to us, and they said, we'd like to sponsor the Kyle Seraphin Show. Here they are, my friends over at Patriot Coolers. You can go to patriotcoolers.com. You can use promo code Kyle. That will get you 10% off. There's other ways to get 10% off, but that's the only way that you support the Kyle Seraphin Show. Promo code Kyle, 10% off, $50 or more. You're going to get yourself free shipping. And if you'll notice right up on there, we've got the patriotic drinkware line. I think our friend Ryan Matta is sporting one of those suckers right now. He's got his, there it is right there. There's the Free the Cup solution. It made it down to Texas. It is now a multi-state traveling patriotic cup. And I have mine as well here. Look at this, folks. This is the OG one. This is the one I've been carrying around since 2017. I have the other one they sent me recently. Oh, this is kind of my jam. This is what I use in the gym. So patriotcoolers.com, promo code Kyle. Use those suckers and support them, support our show. We really appreciate that. A couple other little things we want to bring to your attention. You know my friends over at Catholic Vote. That's not Catholic Vote. There they are. Catholic Vote, the Americans' top advocacy program in the fight for faith, family, and freedom. We've got some really interesting announcements coming from CatholicVote.org pretty soon, so stay tuned to the show for future announcements. But you can also get The Loop, which is an outstanding email. It's got all kinds of great information in it, and here is today's Loop. I'm looking at it right now on my screen. For the 12th, they have Vice President Harris supporting a no-limits abortion. Yeah, they love that baby killing, don't they? We've also got Nikki Haley is joining the Biden administration saying that Tommy Tuberville is not doing the right thing while he's holding up military appointments. Good for Tuberville. Way to hold the line there, Senator. We've got a couple of other ones here. They're talking once again about the anti-gun moves that are going on in New Mexico. It's a whole list of great stuff going on. Just check out their emails. You get them about 5 o'clock in the morning, my time, and they are nothing short of helpful in your day. They will get you rolling. CatholicVote.org. And lest we forget, let's go ahead and give our free promo that we do for our buddy Garrett O'Boyle. Go to the-suspendables.com. The-suspendables.com will get you access to the Suspendables online store, directly supporting the O'Boyle family. This is their jam. This is what he does. He's got a little press, and he is going to be sending these things out. So if you guys are ordering them, there's a little delay, but they are coming out your way. You will be getting Suspendables merch soon. And we've got some really cool limited edition Suspendables lapel pins. If you want to wear them as you're dressed up, I'm sure I'm going to start wearing them on my interviews. All right, that is all the news that is fit to print on the support thing. We've got a Rumble rant already from B. Cancella saying free the Jan Sixers, free J Sixers. Let's get started with that. We're going to be talking to David. David, welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show, bud. Thanks for getting up with us.
Man, to see you this morning. It is always good to wake up on this side of the grass, isn't it?
It certainly is. Yeah, it's certainly good to be able to walk out and breathe the free air, even in a country where we've decided to go after political prisoners, huh?
Man, it is a different world than we grew up in. I know you feel the same way. And yeah, there's a lot of risk in what you do and what I do. And I don't think people fully appreciate what that looks like for not only us, but our families and friends and everybody else. It's a strange, unfortunately.
Make sure you remind me to come back to the risk to friends and family, because I do want to cover that first. But first, what I want to do is find out a little bit about you as a person. We're going to talk about your work after that. So where'd you come from? Where are you from?
So born and raised Texas, just good old around probably 100-mile area around Dallas, Fort Worth. But I do travel. So this is not all I've seen, which is, I think, a huge, huge difference for a lot of people that don't leave their backyard very much. But I'm just a carpenter, man. I'm a Christian. My dad was a pastor. Just have a feel for people, a concern and a desire to bring people together. Back in 1992, my wife was pregnant with my son, and we saw the LA, on television from Texas. And I just thought, not everybody hates each other like they say on the news. And I saw what the media did with the little piece of video and divided, the different races, I guess, for some kind of big battle. And I couldn't see raising a child in that. So we started an awareness program. Stop Hate is an acronym. Start turning off prejudice, heal attitudes through education. Just meant to kind of start those conversations that are kind of difficult sometimes or whatever, and learn to get to know each other again, because the fear is in what we don't know. It's the ignorance that drives that. So, I believe after 32 years watching this whole thing continue, this is where we are now. And on one hand, it makes me feel like, hey, I haven't done my job at all. But then I see where we are in the picture right now. And I think, maybe God kept it for this moment. If Stop Hate did anything back in the 90s, it wouldn't matter now. And it's just a really strange position to be in. It's nothing we signed up for on purpose. And, God's got a bigger plan than us.
Definitely the truth. Tell me about the family. I heard you were married. I heard a kid. Do you have more than one kid?
Yeah, so I was married and divorced. I was married for 21 years, I think, and divorced, one child, one son. And then I remarried, and now I have two bonus kids, a boy and a girl. So I've got two boys and a girl, and a beautiful wife, great family. She's a nurse, and her name's Cindy. She is amazing. And I'm sure, as you know, we couldn't do what we do without the support of a super spouse. And she is definitely that for me. She's a great helpmate and understands what we're going through in a way that most people don't.
Let's talk about that a little bit too. What is Cindy's take when you first started, and has that evolved?
So we did a bunch of demand-free speech. Well, this is kind of a funny story. On my 50th birthday, she said, David, it's a big birthday. You need something nice, something memorable. It's 50. And I said, well, okay, I'll think about it. And she knows I'll never say anything. She said, well, do you want a truck? We can put a down payment on a truck. Or if you want to take a trip to see your friend in Thailand, we can go over there. And I said, I'd really like to put about that much a down payment or a trip cost on Stop Hate and see if I can kind of kick it up again. I just feel like I have to give it another try. And, 50 years, I hadn't done anything with it. I've never tried to blow it up bigger than something local. Back in the 90s, I took on the Klan and the KKK and the Nation of Islam and Black Panthers. So I got a lot of death threats and stuff, and kind of laid low for a couple of years and just did local things, community, fundraiser things for other groups to help. And so we did a lot of demand-free speech things when Trump was in office. From 2019 really is when my birthday was. So I put a little money in Stop Hate, got another guy to help build a website, started doing these rallies for free speech with, Lord Loomer and a bunch of people that were, already in the movement or whatever. And it was very interesting. We did one in Washington, D.C. in 2019, demand free speech. Excuse me. But the one on free in D.C. was really interesting because the Proud Boys did security for us. And what makes it special is Officer Lamond, the inspector, is the same guy that they would not let testify in the Proud Boys trial. And I think that's amazing because I have emails from him. I have, our correspondence back and forth saying, have a peaceful event, all these things. The Proud Boys are doing security. There's news clips of reporters asking me about the Proud Boys. I said, yeah, they're my friends. They're working with the police to provide security. Antifa. And it's really crazy to me, Kyle, how none of that made it into the trial. They wouldn't let Lamond testify. They said they threatened him with charges. Then after he didn't testify, they charged him anyway. But, I could have gotten up there on the stand and I was available to say there is a relationship between the Proud Boys and Lamond. They do work together. And the Proud Boys were saying, look, we were texting them all day on the 6th saying, we're going to party after, tonight. We got beers and girls and we're going to have a fun time. And they weren't doing anything. And there's proof. And that's amazing. And I know this story about how they don't let the facts get out when it's detrimental to them.
No, they really don't. And actually, I read the indictment against Lamond the other day, and my instinct is that he was probably running the boys as either official sources or as what we would call a hip pocket source, which means you don't fill out paperbook, but you're getting information from them and you're using it as intel on the ground. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. I want to kind of dig into the background. You said you're a carpenter by trade. You're one of many kind of blue collar trades that we've had that have been interested in making America better. That's right. Tell me about how you go from being a guy that's swinging a hammer and looking down at building something and then looking at the country and seeing you want to do a change there.
Well, you have to kind of be careful the friends you hang out with, I guess. When we started doing the demand-free speech stuff, it was a tour thing and it was cool and it was an awareness. There was a lot of censorship and banning and people didn't understand. They thought, oh, you lost your social media account. We're saying, no, we're talking Airbnbs and banks and abilities to be a normal citizen, and nobody really listened. Now you see the issue. So I saw that as a way to, bridge the gap between the two different sides politically. As a Christian, I guess I'm supposed to try to love everyone, right? And of course, the propaganda and the programming and the poison that we all drink, the Kool-Aid on both sides, I guess you want to say, there's a real separation that is obvious, especially when you go to these events and you see the vitriol from each side. And it's really amazing to try to have conversations with people, because that's when you break that barrier and say, hey, I'm not as scary as you thought, or I'm not as dumb or smart as you thought. I'm just a person. I'm just trying to get through this like everyone else. So as a Christian, I think that's kind of our thing, is to be active, keep your hand on the plow, all those things that we hear, but it's more personal than that to me. And I think that anyone with children can understand that we don't want our kids getting beat up because of their height or weight or anything. And it's just a kind of a mutual feeling. I think everybody can, as far as in defense of their children. Now, we can be idiots all day long, but when we see it start families and all that stuff, it's a lot different. And that's really been my perspective on it. So with the free speech stuff, it naturally, I see what the media does. I saw it in 1992. I've always tried to expose, the lies that they create, or the misdirection, I guess is a better word. And so when January 6th came up, we did the demand free speech. Before that, we did the Stop the Steal rallies down in Texas. I helped organize the ones at Austin at the state capitol. Had a really good time, had great people, all peaceful events. As usual, we never have outbreaks or violence or anything. Try not to. I mean, that's the whole point. And so after that, I didn't want to go to D.C. And everybody kind of convinced me. They said, you kind of have to. You've been doing Stop Hate so long. This is a culmination of all your work. And my said, you really need to go. And we had a house full of COVID and a new puppy dog. I did not want to leave, but we took a handful of people down to film. It was not for Trump. We didn't go for the parade or anything. We went to film and capture history, because we know how important that is. And we spread out that day and caught some amazing stuff.
You mentioned things about faith, yours in particular, but maybe we can talk about America. Has America lost faith at this point? Are you seeing any change?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's that part, with quotes and stuff, but the one guy said something about all this is made for a moral society, and honestly, I think I say all the time, man, and I'm not a preacher or anything, but I do read the Bible enough, stories and some of the things and how they kind of relate. And I always tell people, you think it was bad back in Noah's time when God said enough's enough, and we've got to clean this place up. I can't think that we're in a better place than Noah was. I can't think, we see what's happening to the children and to people and to countries, and it's just steamroll. And I can't think that the morality level is higher than it was during. So that concerns me, because we can't see eye to eye if we can't empathize. I know you were talking the other night, empathize. We can't do any of that with each other. We don't want to. We're taught to hate each other. It's a long game. It's propaganda on both sides. I don't think people realize that it doesn't matter which side you're on. You're still consuming what they want you to consume. And it's made and developed to pit us against each other. And look, for the first 20 years of Stop Hate, I noticed them use race, religion, sex, financials, they could use to divide people. But during that process, it's like the powers that be said, I believe that we can divide everyone politically by making everything political. Now we have health issues that are things that shouldn't even be in that sphere so many times, that are being used against us as people to make us see our differences and not like each other because of it. I'm right, you're wrong. And that's no place to live, but it's intentional. And I don't think people really understand the depth of what propaganda does and how it's affected every aspect of our lives, from entertainment to religion to government, how we interact on a social level. And when you hear the media say, hey, everybody hates each other and we're this close to a civil war, but then when you go to the grocery store, of all shapes, sizes, colors, helping each other reach the thing on the top shelf or lift a case of water or whatever it is, excuse me, how you doing? You don't see it in reality. So there's that disconnect. And we've always just tried to tell people to plug into what's real and have some conversations.
Plug into what's real. I think those are great words. My father and I always say the same thing back and forth. People hear it on the show. Twitter is not real. Social media is not real. And I think there's something there. In the 1950s and 60s, they used to say that families would disavow a marriage based on race. And today, there is a much higher percentage of people. That's a very low percentage today. There's way more people that would say that about political parties, that they would actually disavow a new spouse, or they would disavow a union because of political parties. Do you remember when that change happened?
You know, I don't know specifically, but I can tell you another point is, you know, for smokers, people that smoke cigarettes, when they started the censorship of where you could smoke, you know, banning it here and there. And honestly, I know it sounds stupid in a lot of ways, but people didn't stand up for freedoms. And it was just another little chip that they could take off and say, hey, we can control you. And then the seat belts and this and that. And I'm not saying these things are bad for us, but some things you're able to choose for yourself. I mean, if you have to put a warning label on everything, I worry about you. You know, if you don't have the common sense, but that's been taught away from people in every aspect, Kyle. I think that's what we're seeing, you know, and I tell people, of all the wars that America has ever fought, the only successful fight that we've had is against the American mind, the dumbing down of America. And it's a sad, sad thing. And I'm not calling people stupid, but I am, because they don't take the time to understand. They don't do their own research. They listen to the talking heads and they think, well, that's the way I'm supposed to believe. And I can't see a better example in the world than what we experienced January 6th.
All right, so I've called January 6th the American Rorschach test. I've said it to a number of people that attended that day, and then people that are in the space talking about it. Are you familiar with the concept of a Rorschach test?
Yeah, somewhat.
So just for the audience awareness, if you're listening and you haven't heard my comparison, a Rorschach test is the common psychological ink blot test. It's where they put a blob of ink down in the middle of the paper, they fold it in half, it smashes down and makes a shape, you open it up and tell me what you see. And then we're supposed to be able to interpret things about you based on what you saw in this amorphous, not real shape. It's like looking at clouds and calling out a shape. But in many ways, I think the American Rorschach test of January 6th is, if you tell me what you see on January 6th, I can interpret a lot of things about the way you look at the world. Do you find that to be true as you go out and talk about J6 with folks?
You know, that is such a super way to look at things, man. I haven't really considered that. I've been more interested in trying to figure out why they see what they see, or why they don't see what they don't see, because I've got everything that happened that day, and I've got it on video half the time, you know, and witnesses. And it's amazing, Kyle, amazing that people have become so hateful toward each other because of Orange Man Bad, or because of whatever reason, that they say horrible things to people like Mickey, Ashley's mom. You know, come on. You know, anytime you lose a child, I don't care if the child was right or wrong. Why add pain to pain so much in such a hateful way? But that goes for both sides. Look what we say about George Floyd. You know what I'm saying? It's really amazing. But to think that the way people view it is anything other than programming. I don't think people realize how deep this is and how strategic and how long it's gone on. You know, the fact that propaganda is legal. How much of what we see is real from either side? Why are they both trying to always direct us toward conflict within the people? Because it is always a left to right in the street fight. And the one time we go to the government and say, hey, y'all are the problem, what happens?
Yeah, you're correct. That's definitely a problem. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put you on the spot with a couple things. What did you see when you saw the George Floyd footage? Tell me what you interpret and how you see that in the world.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of pressure, you know, as far as I could see, and just as a common sense kind of guy, you know, I'm big and physical. I played ball and I wrestle, all that stuff. So I don't feel like what he did could have caused someone's death, for one. And I see the crowd around that situation that day that was antagonistic and almost planting seeds for people to be able to take later and say, this is this. And, you know, just the spin on it all. And people understand that the same coroner that weighed in on the original coroner's decision there on the Floyd trial is the same coroner from D.C. that lied about all the deaths of the citizens from January 6th. It's the same guy. So you're seeing this whole power thing from the top down, and it trickles into our lives every day, even when we don't know it. But he reversed that Chauvin decision. The first coroner said, yeah, drugs, and the cop didn't do it. And this coroner from D.C. called and said, you should fire your publicist. You should have never said that in public because you're wrong, and we need the political points or whatever. So I think it's interesting. People don't know if they don't do their own research of who these people are and how they affect the whole game.
Do you celebrate the death of George Floyd?
No, not at all. Nobody's death. But I also I don't celebrate it, but I can place responsibility where it goes, and that's the thing. You don't have to do that through hate. You can do that just through common sense or knowledge or whatever. Or what an unfortunate day. I think it's horrible. And I think there's more to do with the behind the scenes story than his death that people have any understanding of, with the counterfeit bills and all the other things. I think everything's a cover up of a cover up of a cover up at this point, and a diversion, so, chasing rabbits we could do all day. We don't have whatever facts we don't have, but we have that video. We have the policeman that's sitting in jail for 30 years or whatever. I think that's ridiculous, and I don't know how things changed all of a sudden in the length of time during this administration. We're seeing long prison sentences from before this administration. I just don't remember it. So it feels personal to everyone. Oh, they're really punishing us. They're, taking that pound of flesh, and they are. But I want to know kind of when it started, how it started, why it started, more than just sitting here and trying to suffer through it, because we need to fix it. That's what people don't understand. This is a great time, Kyle, for everybody to come together and say the justice system's broken. This is torturous. There's things that you're not supposed to do to people, and it seems like our government doesn't mind doing those things anymore. That's why everybody's so mad. Oh, brown shirt this and Nazi that. And I totally get it. But calling names doesn't fix the problems either. And even Trump said in his inauguration, I'm giving the power back to the people. Well, why aren't we acting like that yet? That and kind of the direction I like to try to get to take action. It's about information, education, motivation, and activation. I know you talk about that all the time. You got to do something. You got to put your hands on it, and people just seem to be allergic to that, or scared, or don't know the importance of it. How important it is to the person that you're helping a lot of times. And we've learned a lot of lessons, man, in the last 2.5 years, very hard lessons, but we've learned them together. We've found solutions as a family, as a group. And, I don't think either side of the political spectrum understands the power in the people and what they created with this information that we have now about the Uniparty, and about how they're all working against us, and how they're not defending us. They're not legislating in our behalf. They're not doing what they could or what they should for the American people. And I don't care which political side that is. They're people. They're Americans. They don't need to be tortured and suffer like that.
So there's two words that come to mind. One of them is sympathy. That's the way that I feel. I see that you feel a certain way, and I'm kind towards it. And then there's empathy, which means you feel a certain way, and I can put myself in your shoes and feel that way as well. And I think a lot more Americans seem to have gotten a sense of empathy watching people that look more like them, that sound more like them, that had backgrounds, military service, working in a trade, something like that, going to jail over January 6th. We have a lot more empathy for the prison system. I'm going to monologue just for 1 second, because you just brought up that we talked on a Twitter space about how, I can have sympathy and I can sometimes have empathy for people going to jail that have punched a lady in the face and broken her orbital socket. I don't feel great putting that guy in a cage, especially when you see their face. They're another human being and they get locked up for the first time, and they've been in county before and their buddies are all there, and they go to federal prison and you check them in. And we drive into the what they call the man trap, which is where the gate closes and another one closes behind you. You're in the vehicle. And he goes, "Is this the door?" And I said, "No, this is just the yard." And then you take him in through multiple doors through the Sally port, and you go and you set him in, and they weigh him and they change him. And I mean, the look in people's eyes when they realize that they are in a federal prison is a very unsettling thing to watch. And so I can feel for that person. I can feel for them, even if I don't like them as a human being. And I think the things they've done are atrocious. And right now, more people on the political right are getting a taste of that. I think people on the political left had a big sympathy towards criminals, maybe in a way that was not even healthy, but there is a healthiness that everybody understands. We're talking about human beings. We're talking about taking their freedom. That should not be discussed lightly. And even people in law enforcement are a little bit guilty of it, this callousness, because that's what you do for a living. You got to kind of brush it off. So we're in a place now where we have a potential to see that there are human beings involved in the justice system, and some of them are going to be treated badly. Let's talk about the exploitation you see of prisoners, if you do. I know we've kind of been in spaces about that, but I want to bring it to this audience in a tight way. A couple of minutes of your thoughts on how the justice system is treating, if there is a justice system at all.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that people are finally understanding what's happening. Our J6ers are in these prisons, and they're talking to other prisoners that aren't J6ers. And the common theme is, yeah, we're guilty, but we're not that guilty. They stacked all these charges on us to get us to take a plea, and now they've got us in the system, and now we're paying phone calls. They're making money on our labor. It's a system thing. I mean, we've got more prisons than anywhere in the world, and we see why it's profitable for these people. But that lack of humanity, bro, that's I think something that politically it's really strange, because like I said earlier, with Trump, man, bad, we even have women who were killed by police. We have black people who were almost killed, Philip Anderson for one, and you would think there'd be some crossover there with communities to say, this maybe something's going on here we didn't know. We thought it was all a bunch of white supremacists or whatever, Enrique Tarrio, Afro-Cuban. Nobody cares. So at that point, we even lost the advantage we had amongst ourselves to humanize each other because of politics. And I don't think that the elevator reaches to the top for people when they realize there's a political pendulum that swings back and forth. So how people feel if we had our version of sedition hunters that was hunting down people in the street, hunting people on social media, turning them into the FBI. I mean, to be honest, I went ahead and bought antifahunters.org because, hey, it's either going to be used to find the bad Antifa guys or used in a way to protect someone else from using it in a horrible way. I don't want to hunt people. I don't think it's healthy for a country to feel this way. This is like right before a civil war, right? And I don't think people understand how close we get sometimes to just popping off, or how close that the government wants us to be. I think that's the main key from that. But I don't know, man. I see these trials. I see the court cases. I see the posts on social media. And there is such an anger and such a hatred. People are not connecting. They're not communicating thoroughly or properly about this. They're not in a place to where they want to understand. And I say, until your kid gets hit by a drunk, you're not going to join Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. This is kind of that same thing, because unless it affects you to understand. But when it's the criminal justice system, it affects everyone. And it's the same suits that have been doing this to other communities for decades. And, I see the comments. Oh, well, y'all didn't care when it was us. Y'all didn't care until it happened to you. Isn't that the way it always goes, though? So now we care. Now we see, now we're experiencing that, because time has passed the point to where we can even afford this legal system, or we even understand it, or the laws have been changed just enough to where we can't operate properly, function in it, and defend ourselves. So now we're all in the same boat. Do we work together and row to save ourselves, or do we just let it sink around us? Because to me, it should be both sides addressing our politicians, saying this is what we want. Otherwise, they're going to test us and make us destroy each other.
I want to make sure we continue that vein. I want to talk about dehumanizing language and also humanizing language, which has happened on both sides. Before we do that, I want to try to troubleshoot a little bit. We're getting a little bit of audio drop here, and I know that's taken away from our message. So the question is this. One, are you streaming the show in the background somewhere on the way in so we can eliminate that? Brian's giving me troubleshooting hints over the over the text messages there. And the second thing is if you got a VPN on, that would be also a possibility that would cut you down.
Let me see what's going on here.
I know it's mostly because we're just catching momentary little glitches of the audio, and I know it distracts people. And I think the message here is important, and more importantly, I think the message carries over. While we're doing that, if you think of the piece of the trailer, you've got a new documentary style film that's out called January 6th. What is it called? The Real Timeline?
Yeah, a true timeline.
True
yes.
timeline. What is the best trailer? What's the best place to find that? Ryan's going to go dig that piece up. I know we had a couple different ones lined up, but
You can go to 1000daysofterror.com, 1000 Days of Terror, and see both of the trailers. And people watch them both, because if you just watch one, you'll be sad. You need to see them both so you can be properly outraged. We've kind of made one for each audience, if you will, and we're doing a little experiment in that respect to see how people react to it. It's been an amazing experiment so far, I can tell you that.
okay, so we're going to pull the teaser from that. I see the coming soon, and that was obviously released yesterday from what I got from you. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, let's run that trailer. If you, like I said, if you have VPN or anything like that on, if we can debunk it or shut down anything on the computer that's running in the background, that might help a little bit. If it's not, we'll stick with it. We'll figure it out. I'm going to let Ryan run the trailer of this, and then we're going to talk about what you saw on January 6th, if that works.
David, one is 1 minute 9 seconds and one is 1 minute and 42 seconds. Which one would you like to run first? I'll run them back to back for you.
Let's do the longer one first. Get it over with. All right.
Fellow Americans, good morning. Certain dates echo throughout history, including dates that instantly remind all who have lived through them where they were and what they were doing when our democracy came under assault. Dates that occupy not only a place on our calendars, but a place in our collective memory. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021.
We didn't look away after the attack on Pearl Harbor. We didn't look away after the attacks on 9/11. They may have been from foreign powers, but we still, just because it was Americans who did this, we cannot look away after the attack of January 6th.
Don't dare call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionists, domestic terrorists. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
What if I told you that the full story of January 6th isn't what you've been led to believe? What if I told you that at least 4 unarmed people were killed at the Capitol that day? What if I told you that there was no published restricted zone available to the public, and that President Trump wasn't allowed to direct people to the specific rally points around the Capitol? What if I told you that police removed hundreds of barricades from the area of the first breach hours before it happened? What if I told you that the first group of demonstrators that breached security gates that morning had a police escort? What if I told you nothing, but showed you everything? What if we published the first accurate timeline with all of the footage and all of the context? What if we allowed you to decide? January 6th, A True Timeline. Coming soon.
Ooh, I muted myself. Coming soon and available right now, actually. This was the teaser trailer. It was released yesterday. I think we have David back, and we actually may have corrected this little connection problem. So, David, I look forward to having you kind of tell people what they can expect looking at that after seeing the teaser.
Kyle, he's coming right back in 2 seconds. Yeah, he came back in, but he was frozen, so he just left, and he's coming right back in.
Fair enough. So what you didn't see if you were not watching the trailer was the fact that you're seeing the Kamala Harris. There's obviously a lot of pause. There's a lot of drama that is built up around these speeches that they're giving. They're all Democrats at this point, and they are pushing this long narrative. And I think that Joe Biden is probably the best at showing what their position is, which is to say that they sound unhinged to me. If you do these comparisons, I actually got in social media discussions about this literally yesterday. I saw January 6th equals 9/11 sort of evil on January 6th, on a day when we could all say Americans came together in 22 years ago. We watched something horrific happen to our country. There are many reasons why, that people have looked into it and stopped trusting media narratives because of it. But at the end of the day, a lot of people lost their lives. We saw some buildings fall down in a great American city, and the skyline was forever changed. It was dramatically affecting me as a 19-year-old. I know many, many men that are my age right now looked at that event and they said, I am going to war over this because someone has attacked our country. And they didn't go to war against the mainstream media, and they didn't go to war against the political establishment. They went to war against a tangible enemy who legitimately hated the way of life that Americans lived. And instead of our politicians saying, we have the common thread, we have unity, we have a bunch of people that have looked at each other, and for the first time in quite a while, they said, my brother is an American, and I don't care what they believe, and I don't care what they look like. And so many of us that went into the military know what that looks like. I'm sure, David, you know what I'm talking about. But you see guys go in, it doesn't matter whether you're on a construction crew or whether you're on a platoon that's marching through Afghanistan. The guy that's next to you is making sure that your job gets done. They're looking out for your safety. They're making sure that you're able to do your job in a way that you can come back home at the end of the day and make a living. And man, it is really, really tough to say that instead of using that political capital and passing a bunch of things that said, we're going to protect the American people, we're going to reclaim a bunch of stuff that has been, ceded away, they just passed a bunch of surveillance laws and they've been using it against us now. So we waited 20 years to see the seeds of that grow into, the choking vine to tyranny. I don't mean to get too poetic about it. Let's talk about dehumanizing. Let's talk about the fact that some of people are now seeing in a new way the humanization of the prison system on both sides. We're getting accused of it, but that actually could be a really good thing that people on the political right are looking over and saying, I now have some skin in the game when it comes to prisons.
Listen, I think one of the best examples right now is sitting in jail. And we're talking about 9/11. People who took up that fight. I know a guy that when 9/11 happened, he was so upset that he joined the military. He went and served. He was awarded 2 Purple Hearts and all kinds of awards, medals for service. And he's a January 6er now, sitting in jail for 17 years. Now, if I stopped the story just before January 6th, we'd be looking for him to put him on the news and call him a hero. You mean you left your life when you saw 9/11 happen and you went and fought in the military and earned Purple Hearts, saved people's lives? You're a hero until you say January 6th. And that's where the disconnect is. That's where the people don't know what they don't know. And all we've tried to do is show them, but that's what's happening, the dehumanizing. And you're right, man. If the right can look over to the left now and say, hey, we've been, passive on this. We've just let this go. We didn't pay attention to it, which is the normal job of our politicians, not to listen to us, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, it's par for the course, but we're listening and we're experiencing it and we're befriending other people in the prisons. I've got one friend that he goes to prison and they separate him from it. He starts organizing. He's like, hey guys, what are you charged with? Yeah, it's overcharged. Let's talk about remedies and ways to fix this. So there is some bonding going on between people. And look, the Bible's really specific, Kyle. It says to minister to the widow, the orphan, and the prisoner. It doesn't say witness to the innocent prisoners. It says all of them. And here we're trying to quantify who we can support and who we shouldn't because they're good or bad or they did things. But that goes for the widows and the orphans too. Do you just want to minister to the good orphans? You don't want to minister to the hard cases or the little old grumpy ladies. You want to leave them but be with the nice ones. It just doesn't work that way. So I think the more that we see that we're more alike than we are different on both sides. Look, we suffer from the same problems. We have the same hopes and desires. We have the same fears. And the more that those are made to look similar, then I think we'll find ourselves a lot faster. And right now, that biggest fear is the government for all people. You think people on the left aren't worried about Trump getting back in and flipping the switch and doing this whole thing? It's terrifying to people because they don't understand what the programming is.
Yeah, I would hate to see our country get into sort of like a Palestine and Israel scenario, but we're kind of in that. We at least the first shots have been fired on there.
Yeah, they have. And listen, man, in Bloody Hill, our second documentary we put out, at the end, man, I cry like a kid. I'm like, hey, we don't want a civil war. That is not what we want, but they're pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. And they stick those words in our mouth and they say, oh, these extremists and these violent Christian groups. And look at the SPLC, what they do. Look at these groups that are made to label people and drive hatred toward when you've got abortion people that are okayed, and then you've got Christian adoption agencies that are on a hate list. I don't understand where humanity is disconnected from children, for one, for babies. I worry for us punishment-wise from God for what we've done to our children. I mean, these are real issues that a lot of people don't see eye to eye on. And then, oh, it's the crazy Christian guy. Well, maybe it's just my morality's different and I can't see, murdering a child full term. I know there's families out there that would gladly love that child and raise that child. Now, I'm a product of adoption, so I kind of get it different, I guess.
You want to talk about that just a little bit? That's I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't just volunteered it, and I probably should have been able to find that out. Tell me what that's like growing up, knowing that somebody opened their house to you.
Yeah, emotional.
Did you know growing up that you were adopted?
Yeah, from as probably as early as I could understand it. My brother was adopted from another family. He's 4 years older than me, and put in the best house. I can't express how great it is to know, because not everybody gets that, man, especially through those systems. So I'm one of the lucky ones. And, even to this day, we work closely with a nonprofit for kids that age out of the foster system. We're trying to build a place for them because there's nowhere. And you look at statistics for these prisons. If you want to build a prison, you go to the foster system and you see what their numbers are, because that's what you base your prison population on. That's the kids that'll be staying there eventually. And we see the trafficking, we see the crime rate within those communities of these kids that are just turned out in the street. And it's not like they were in a good environment up to that point, because they weren't. They're abused by these people. They're given the Fauci drugs by these people, all these different mind-altering, mood-altering, you have ADHD, all these things. So they're not in a good place when they leave. And now they're on the street. What are you supposed to do when they just turn you loose when you're 18? Okay, you're on your own. We can't keep you here any longer. They end up homeless. They end up in crime. They end up in bad places. And look, the church should have never let that happen. They should have never let the state take that responsibility away from them. And I'm not saying the church is perfect, because we know it's not. But I can bet you it's better than the state and what they've done to them medically, psychologically. The court system, anybody that's familiar with it knows it's just trash. These kids don't have advocates. They don't have someone fighting for them in their corner. And we've learned so much about the abuses in that system that people just aren't aware of. And hopefully if they knew, they would care. But Kyle, we're at a place to where if it's not Applebee's and soccer and T-ball and my 40-hour week job, that's all I have time for. I really don't want to get involved with anything else that's out of my wheelhouse, because it's uncomfortable, or I don't have time for that, or I'm not here for that. I want to be entertained. I want to be pacified, and I don't want to have to work. That's our microwave society we've been raised in, to get everything quick and easy now. And we don't want to have to work for anything. It's our downfall, man.
Ostensibly, we're a Christian nation, at least a majority Christian founded nation, tolerant of all faiths, but that's the foundation. One of the things that always sticks with me from the Bible, and it's hard for us to live it, is that whatever you do to the least of these, that's what you do unto me. That's what Jesus says to us. So what is our society doing to these least of us?
Yeah, it's being the worst to us. It really is.
I mean, imagine, you just said it, that they look for the populations of foster kids, and then they decide what they're going to do with their prison building. If that's the mindset, I mean, that's the most unchristian, uncharitable thing that anybody could imagine. That you just look, what a hard, pragmatic look in the world,
Kyle,
with no hope.
But it's the most profitable way. Why do you think prisons pop up? Oh, we need this. Our community needs this prison. It's a cash cow. We make money. And until you're a prisoner and you say, gosh, man, it costs me to make phone calls. The shoes are marked. We talked about this on the space the other night.
Yeah, please dig into that as far as you can.
Everything's more expensive. And I'm not saying it's 2 to 3 times or 5 times the price. It's just more expensive. And we'll talk about it from a J6 perspective. These people are broke. They've given all the money that they have to try to put a down payment on an attorney for the lawyer, so that they have to pay out the rest of their lives. They will be in debt forever. They're not winning the cases, so they're winding up in jail anyway. They can't pay their bills because they're the breadwinner and they're the ones sitting in prison. So they're reaching out to the public trying to get support just so they can have those phone calls. It probably takes about $200 a week for these guys in commissary. And here's the reason why. I'm not saying sodium and sugar are better for you, but the things that they feed you from the prison probably aren't. So a lot of them live on the ramen noodles and the honey buns that you can buy prepackaged where people aren't spitting in your food or worse. And so the expense in that, it's a racket. And then I know one guy that's working for the laundry, the laundry, he gets $31 a month. That would be slave labor. And we know that it would be slave labor if they didn't pay him $1 a day. So that's the way that they get out of it. But then they charge the state 12, 18, 20 bucks an hour for that laundry service. And that's the money they make. And they've got work programs, education programs. It's not really rehabilitation. It's how can we make our prison population more profitable for the shareholders? How can we maximize expense? Well, if we charge a little bit more for commissary, a little bit more on those shoes they have to buy, or when it's cold, they have to buy warm stuff because the heater's not on in the summer. It's new underwear or shoes, flip-flop. It's a racket on a racket. People don't appreciate it, and they think, hey, if you did something bad, that's where you belong. I don't know about all that. And I think that First Step Act Trump's been working on has done wonders for the, non-violent offenders. And then we have to start breaking that down and say, well, so you're charged with violence, but were you? We're having a lot of issues in our community right now. People are having this big disconnect. Oh, y'all were violent. Y'all did bad things, so we really can't support you. And they don't understand what self-defense looks like. They really don't. I mean, when you're attacked by someone and you react and you respond and you defend yourself, if someone were to walk up right at that point, you can't tell who started the fight. You just see a fight and you don't know what to do. Well, the police started this altercation. We have videos and stuff, and it's cool, but people don't want to hear that. They think that we went to do violent things because there's some idiots in the crowd yelling some stupid things, which people always do. I don't care what side you're on. But for some reason, everybody thought that first day that we killed a policeman for some weird reason. And we can get into depth as much as you want on that. But Sicknick was not murdered by the crowd. A lot of people still don't know that because it's still mentioned. It's still never been properly retracted. They still have him at Arlington National Cemetery. And, they still hit him it's just terrible what they've done with that story. And Sicknick's family, they're mad at me because I won't stop talking about it. But they're not living in reality either. They need to know the truth about what happened to their son so they can be properly outraged like we should, because literally the police let him die. As a matter of fact, Kyle, let me just keep going with that because I just got a message from a guy a few minutes ago that's one of the witnesses in that case. He was
What's the specific case?
The Sicknick situation.
The civil case against people, or what is?
Well, no, it's more or less the guy that's going to jail today. He just texted me to say, hey, man, I'm about to go in. I said, I'm on a show. Call me here in a little while. So I want to talk to him again before he goes into prison. He was the second witness in the Brian Sicknick story. He's a combat medic, and he said he recognized Sicknick's name. And he said, hey, somebody said, Sicknick, you all right? Blow it off, whatever. And he said, did you say Sicknick? I know his family. We're all ex-military. We're from the same area. I'm a combat medic. He's having a stroke. His face is white. His lips are blue. Let me treat him. Let me offer. Oh, we've got our own medics. And he said, well, where are they? Where are they? I don't see anybody working on it. Well, they're coming. They're coming. He said, dude, just uncuff me from the back to the front. Just let me. They said, mind your own business. That's about 7:30. And, a couple hours later, Sicknick collapsed because his stroke had eaten his brain. But the first witness had taken Sicknick to the police line around 3 o'clock, between 3 and 4 o'clock, took Sicknick to the police and said, this guy's having a medical emergency. Can you help him? I've got both these witnesses. And yet the media took Sicknick and said, oh, they hit him with a fire extinguisher. They killed him. The mob and all this stuff. Now, we've got video of a cop hitting him in the head with a stick, hitting Sicknick. And we've got a video of a cop spraying Sick Nick by accident.
Let's pause on that for just 1 second, because I've seen the same video. We had Steve Baker on. You probably know of Steve Baker. He's been on there. So he refutes a little bit of what you said. He said that he believes the cops actually did not draw first blood, but it was very close, and it wasn't in a place where everyone could see it.
Right.
But the protesters, at least some protester, whether they were instigators or not, involved the first movement of violence, whatever that was, and I'm not clear on it, and he'll speak for himself.
Yeah.
But that these things happened in all these different areas and all these different places. So as you just mentioned, when you're in the middle of something in a crowd like that, and I've been in those, you don't know where it starts or where it begins. You just know that suddenly around you it's violent. So we'll say that's totally excusable. But as far as the backswing, what it looked like from the video that I saw, and I've seen this on social media, I haven't seen it moved in like Fox News. But what I have seen is that a police officer from Capitol Police has one of the long, collapsible, extended batons. It's probably 36 inches, which is longer than DOJ allows us, by the way.
Yes.
And he takes a swing, and as he does a big swing, he comes back, and in his backswing to go forward again, he thumps Sicknick right behind the ear, and Sicknick goes down and then goes backwards. And so I've seen that video. I think that's what you're referring to. Whether that caused long-term impact or not, but we do know the narrative was fire extinguisher, head, killed on site, and the FBI was running that out too. Why was that narrative trotted out?
Well, it was totally intentional. They even broke the story an hour before he was dead. One of the news organizations leaked it out, trying to get first strike, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They had to retract that story because they hadn't unplugged him yet. He wasn't dead yet. There's also been statements made that just the other day in one of the trials that his family, they had to wait until his family got. Well, his family never made it. So for somebody, I think it was Inspector Lloyd saying that the mob beat up one of the officers so bad they had to keep him on life support until the family got there. Well, Lloyd, the family never got there. He died before the family got there. So I don't know who you're talking about, because the crowd didn't beat up anybody like that and send him to the hospital and put him on life support. That didn't happen. More lies in court. But hey, let's backtrack that. Matthew Black with the hole in his cheek.
Yep.
At 1:07, when Inspector Lloyd and Waldo, there's two different cops, are giving the orders, and Waldo's screaming, "They're throwing stuff! They're attacking! Shoot! Fire! 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 Fire!" And the video, we're sitting there looking at it. Nobody's throwing anything. Nobody's shooting anything. Nobody's doing anything. They're all standing right there. And Waldo seemed to be motivated to incite this violence from the police toward the crowd. But listen, I found the video of the cop in the perch with the gun, and then we looked down to where the pushing on the left started. It depends on which side you're looking. But Joshua Matthew Black is standing there peacefully, not doing anything, and this policeman shoots, and you see his head flip around, and he looks like, what just happened? He didn't know where it came from at all. He thought it was next to him. Somebody hit him or something.
And these are rubber munitions. These are the less than lethal is what they call them, but those are not meant to be aimed at faces.
Actually, this was a marking round, from what I understand, an expired marking round that congealed. So usually it would hit and spray, but it dried up. It was expired. So
this is one of those things that activates under UV light so they can find out who's who later on.
Well, bright yellow splatter, because it's yellow. So I think it was supposed to paint whatever they were trying to mark people in the crowd. But this thing set up and became a bullet.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't explode like it was supposed to. It penetrated him. And they were shooting those into the crowd. There's no telling who else, probably for fear of retribution. There were so many injuries that day. Thousands, people getting their heads cracked. Joshua Matthew Black ended up going inside the Senate chamber to sit, with the rest of the crowd. He never did anything violent. He never struck or pushed or did anything. And yet he's sitting in jail right now. That kid that got shot in the face is in prison right now. And I just don't see how that works, and how people can be happy about that on either side, actually.
Because to be fair, you use something that is expired like that in a malfunctioning device. That means usually the not just the company that manufactured it or the entity that held onto it for too long, if it wasn't marked properly, like they all get sued. That's right. I would see that in a Ferguson, right? If that happened in Ferguson, it's everybody's lawsuit is named and nobody's lining up to take that guy's case, I imagine, right?
No, man, we can't get legal help for these guys. I mean, what we can get, but no, there's nobody trying to knock it out of the park for these guys and get justice for J6ers. And that's where we come in. I mean, nobody else is pushing this. And we believe it has to be in the public. We're not going to get this through the politicians. They've had 2.5 years to help us. They've had the evidence. They've had the murders. And we have evidence and witnesses for every single death. And you see this policeman here with the grenade launcher. We've got reports from the EMS radio, grenade launcher shot to face, teeth missing, all this. And you're not supposed to do that. That takes a less lethal munition and turns it into a lethal munition. And we know that Kevin Greason had his emergency down there in the front when the grenades went off. And witnesses say that, the grenade stopped his heart. That's where he was getting CPR. Now, Benjamin Phillips is a different story. He had a medical emergency and collapsed. But you can't imagine getting these grenades into a crowd full of women and children and people packed in so tight, and they're just randomly throwing them, not at suspects that are doing a specific thing and not in front of the crowd to push it back, but in the middle of the crowd to make it spread out, which does what? Even pushes it toward the police. And I mean, people were so scared of those, and yet the people that weren't directly close to them took it as a rally cry. They were like, hey, you're not going to scare us. Well, it didn't land next to you and take a man's life. So it's a really kind of a weird situation to witness, for one. But the reality of it is there was so much brutality. Now, in these pictures, you're not seeing the crowd fighting at all. Do you see anyone running at the cops or any? They're standing. These cops are standing there. Oh, now there's a little push on the left where the cops are being pushy, trying to offer cover for this guy to throw more grenade. I don't understand why people can't see that and just say, hey, those cops acted horribly. And I think this next documentary that we put out about the timeline is really going to shed the light on that, because we put the police body cams and their conversations and really try to show what actually happened through video, not narration. We ask more questions than we give narrative to. So it's going to be an interesting thing for the public to actually get to see what happened that day. It's been a long time coming.
Well, one of the things that I feel like I can weigh in on is somebody who's trained in use of force and been able to at least had the authority to use violence when necessary. You talked about less than lethal munitions. That's the term we use, less than lethal. And there are certain things that are less than lethal, which is specifically things like batons, right? But the way that you even train, Ryan, and I'm going to do a quick demonstration visually here so people can see. I know we're showing a lot of footage. But the way that we train with less than lethal is that if you have a baton and we train them to hit things like hands, because hands are a compliance tool. If you're coming at me with your hands and I tap you in the hand with a baton, you're going to pull that hand back. And so that is a less than lethal move. We might break your bones. I can hit you in arms. I can hit you in body parts to the body blows. We train for those. Those are less than lethal. The minute that I get above the shoulder, now I am striking towards shoulder, neck, and head. Those are potentially lethal strikes with a less than lethal tool. Because as anyone knows, you've seen people die with a baseball bat hit to the head and so on. So when you use a less than lethal technique and you move it into a lethal range, a beanbag shot to the head can cause death. A beanbag shot to the throat could cause death. A beanbag shot to the chest generally will not. It's a body blow and it makes them think twice about where they're going. So these tools, when misused, are a major problem. And I don't mean to monologue on this thing, but it's so important that people understand the way those stun balls are designed. They are meant as crowd control methods to drive people to a certain direction. If people are charging at you and you throw a area denial tool, like let's say CS gas, in front of them, they don't penetrate the gas. That's the goal. You want to send it in front of a crowd and send them backwards away from the gas. When you send it into the crowd, which is what we've seen done, and it's not always possible to do it better, but in a tight little crowd like that, it's not the same thing as Portland, where they were trying to disperse people and people had abilities to run away. They were sending it into the crowd and they had two choices. The people in the back could run away from it. The people in the front had to run away from it as well. And that went into the police line. It's a really, really bad training technique. It's not the way you train to use these tools. And I know these guys at least should have been trained on that because DC has a ton of protests. That's the thing that I think maybe you and I both can understand. There are a lot of protests. Do you have any idea how many protests go on in Washington, DC on a daily basis or on a weekly basis?
Oh, I would figure 8 to 10 a week. There's a lot of activity in DC. A lot of people want to go there and make their voice heard for many different reasons. And most stay peaceful. You never hear about it. But
yep. From 10 people to thousands of people, it happens with or without permits weekly.
That's right. And I think people are going to be amazed at this film because we show more of the upfront. So like we said earlier, if you don't see who started the fight, you just see a fight and you want to break it up, whatever. But when you see who started the fight, I think that's really critical for people to understand. So we show the video where the crowd made it all the way to the front, and you can hear them on their megaphone saying, please don't shoot us. Please don't spray us. We mean you no harm. we're here to address our grievances. You know, we're not BLM, we're not Antifa. And literally they're standing peacefully. And that's when Waldo and Lloyd start giving the attack, which on the inside of the building, Ted Cruz was giving his objections. And it seems like a really misfortunate timing event, if you know what I mean, for the attack on the crowd to happen at the same time, to give the excuse to do what they did, you know, with the proceedings that day. But it kind of snowballed from there. The people, you can hear them in the crowd saying, get the women and children back. As soon as the police start shooting the rubber bullets in the crowd, at 1:21 or so, I think, they started throwing the grenades into the crowd. And it was really, I've got one video that you hear the crowd at 1:20, and they're standing, they're quiet, they're waiting for some direction, because they really didn't know what was going to happen. They're there to protest, and and it's very quiet. You can listen to this crowd. But at 1:21, and he turned his camera off, and then there were explosions. He turned his camera back on.
Who is this?
Minute, and the crowd is totally USA, angry, USA, and they're not going to back down. So you got guys telling them, get the women and children back. What does that mean? It means there's women and children and dogs in the crowd. Get them back. We're not going anywhere. You're not going to attack us and scare us off. We're going to stand our ground. We're here to protest. We're here to make our voices heard. And you're throwing these grenades at us. And then it was like a rally cry. Yeah, throw another one. We're not scared. Come on, man. What are you doing? So
a lot of combat vets in there, not actually instigated the same way. You've seen a lot of the footage, right? Hours and hours?
I see the government footage. I have access to everything.
Okay. At what point was it declared on bullhorns and loudspeakers that this has been declared a riot and unlawful protest and you now must disperse? When was that done?
An hour and 10 minutes after the police started attacking people. And that's what people don't know. There were no safety exits given. There were no direction. Hey, if y'all will leave this way, we're going to start hurting you. You know, there was no compliance by the police. There was no warning. We say a lot of times on Spaces and stuff, J6 with no warning, because they didn't warn people. They didn't give you proper exits. They're throwing munitions in the crowd. They're shooting people on the front lines. They're doing all kinds of things and never warned us. But yet you hear Waldo, hey, I warned them that we're going to use chemical stuff. Attack. No. An hour and something later, they bring this one little speaker out that nobody can hear, saying you must leave the riot area. Whatever. I mean, it's so quiet. If you're not in front of it, you can't hear it. You can't hear it 30 feet away. They had these big sound systems, man, that worked. And it's not like they were malfunctioning. They could have turned that on, or Pittman or whoever gave the text could have said, instead of, hey, there's a curfew at 6 o'clock. Y'all enjoy your day and hang around until 6, but be sure and be in your hotel till 6. That's basically what it said. They should have said, if you're on the Capitol grounds, you're going to be arrested. You know, you're going to prison and you need to evacuate the premises immediately. And there's a curfew at 6. Or if the police at the front gate that I was standing at when I got there had just said, hey, listen, we found some explosives over at our other buildings, so we're going to need to sweep this area to make sure that everyone's safe. And I know y'all have permitted events on the grass, but it's probably in your best interest not to go on the yard because there could be pipe bombs. And I bet everybody would have stayed on the concrete. Or if they would have said, if you cross this line, you go to prison. I think people might have, but instead they sent 2 girls and 3 guys to try to block 10,000 people that were coming on the grass for what they thought was a concert. They thought Trump was going to come speak. They thought all these politicians were going to be talking on the grass. And then when we get to court, they don't want you to mention that. They don't want you to say, hey, there were permitted events and we were supposed to be on the grass. What are you talking about? Or First Amendment, you can't mention that. It's crazy, Kyle. Crazy.
I want to see if I can task Ryan something in real time. It's one of the joys of doing a live show. We'll see if we can make this happen. Ryan, if you would go look real quickly in the background, maybe search on your phone, see if you can find some of the riot announcements from Portland about what it looked like. These were federal officers in Portland that gave riot announcements. And if we can see them, I think it'd be an interesting contrast, because as my recollection goes, those riot announcements happened before the chemical munitions, before the pepper balls started. They announced that you must now disperse. This was after explosives were thrown from the Antifa crowd and so on. Yeah. And they said, it's okay, now you're done. And this happened for 100 nights in a row. So there should be plenty of evidence of this. I believe I've seen a lot of it.
And you know what's interesting too? I think BLM and Antifa are a little bit more used to those kind of orders, or
they know the rules.
They do know the rules. And you know who didn't know the rules? Us. Because we don't do that stuff. We didn't go for that. We didn't go for a riot. We didn't take our guns. There was not one 4-wheel drive truck on the grass. That's how you know it wasn't an insurrection. If it was an insurrection, we're going to take our 4-wheel drives and we're going to
There'd be some UTVs hitting that door, wouldn't there?
I'm telling you, painted orange, Dukes of Hazzard up on the steps, all that stuff, and it wasn't.
Right.
So, but we don't know the rules and the rules of engagement and attack and all those things. So they've used that against us.
All right, okay. See, look at this. This is why we have Ryan. He's outstanding. Let's listen to a video of something from Portland, and we're going to compare and contrast what we're listening to here. Go ahead.
I think so, anyways. Hopeful.
Yeah.
NATO to Broadway, Columbia to Harvey Milk is closed.
Wow.
This is the Portland Police Bureau. This event is a riot. Southwest NATO to Southwest Broadway, Columbia to Harvey Milk is closed. Leave the area now. NATO to Broadway, Columbia to Harvey Milk is closed.
Well, there you go.
Man, that's loud.
That turns out you can hear that across the entire city. Yeah. And having been in Portland during some of that stuff, the recollection is pretty strong. The protests turn into riots. They get out of hand, and then at some point, the police drive around with loudspeakers and let people know what's going on. I know they have the ability to do that in D.C.
Oh, listen, they had the big sound system on the columns there, and there was bagpipe music coming out of them earlier in the day. So they actually.
So they were queued up and capable, even if they had to commandeer that property, which was already behind the riot line.
Absolutely, and no warning.
Give me a unified look. I think there's some nuance that happens in January 6th. I think and we were talking about it earlier. You look at the country, and there's good and there's bad, and there's people that are saying things that are on gradients one way or another. What is your unified view of what happened if you were to describe it in a couple of minutes to people who were not there? And if there's any balance to, who the victims are in this scenario.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It really is. And justice is going to be even harder than that. But, I see it as a setup in a lot of ways that people don't really consider, I guess. And the politics of it all, when you see the government trying to push a narrative toward domestic violent extremists, and, anybody that's a threat to persons or property, I think that's the most chilling factor of where we live now, because that means that anybody goes and protests now, if you're a threat or even a perceived threat, you can be thrown in jail indefinitely without due process, no bail, no bond, and no hope, no defense. And that's where the J6ers have found themselves. I think most people went down to the Capitol to protest, to make their voices heard, to peacefully and patriotically march, just like Trump said.
What percentage do you think that was?
99.5, and honestly, because the people that made it, this is another interesting point, and I say it all the time, man. It's been determined publicly by everyone that there were not enough police to control the crowd. So who controlled the crowd? The crowd did. Listen, the police beat, shot, and bombed this crowd for over an hour. And the crowd just wouldn't submit and wouldn't play that game. We didn't eat any policemen that day. If we were cannibals, I've said this in a show, we could have eaten every policeman that day. Everybody could have had 2 bites, and we all could have gone home hungry because there weren't enough police to go around. But we didn't. We didn't kill any policemen at all day. Over 50% of police injuries were self-inflicted. If they had to write down in their report that they got pepper sprayed or that they got gassed, they didn't put the part where it was the police that threw it and it came back and wiped out 2 platoons. They just said they got gassed. Well, they're the ones that had the gas. So it's really kind of funny how they stack, 150 something officers were injured. Well, you know how many hundreds of people were injured with those baton strikes to the head, with grenades to the face, with just blatant abuse. So I think that conservatives by and large don't start fights, but they do defend themselves. And I think they were put into that position intentionally. And I think that the powers that were in control of that event wanted a higher body count. I think they wanted more bloodshed. They wanted a bigger reaction from us. And we never gave it to them. They got their 4 victims from that day, and then they got Officer Sicknick. But all those deaths are on the Capitol and the Metro Police. And I'll tell you, I believe that the lack of information and intel was to set the Capitol Police up. The Metro Police was basically the strong arm. And if you look in the media now, everybody's blaming the Capitol Police. Just, they were woefully unprepared. They didn't have the equipment. They didn't have that. But that's just a surface, a topical thing. When you dig into it, their helmets were taken away several days before because they were expired. and they weren't replaced yet, or they didn't get the information that they were going to have a big event, of course. So when you look at the give and take of information and how that was not a free experiment for everyone. Yogolanda Pittman, for one, held a lot. I mean, there's intel that never made it to the top. It's choreographed chaos. It's intentional. It's criminal. And you know, our big push has been to take these congressmen and senators and say, hey, we understand what you've been told by the media. We understand the lies, but we don't say it like that. The reality is, here's the witnesses, here's the testimony. 3 people were killed by the police. 1 was not rendered aid, and 1 was the stroke, which is also on the police. And there's the facts. Now, if that's a felony, aren't they supposed to report those felonies? And if they don't, can't they go to jail for 3 years? That's my hope, that they can and that they do, because we've reported these things and nobody's reported them for investigation. They still sit dormant.
One of the big criticisms, I think, of the J6 crowd was that this is a, protect the police, back the blue type of crowd. Sure. And this is all the thing you say right up until the police are, doing something and quote unquote their jobs. And then suddenly they're willing to pile onto the police. How do you answer stuff like that?
It goes back to self-defense. I don't think anybody can be in a position. I don't care if you're police. I don't care if you're president. If the president came up and attacked me, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to defend people around me. If I see the president running over there kicking some little kid in the head, you bet yourself I'm going to go over there and do something about it. And that's what's happening on January 6th. People went, they were standing at the front line. Matthew Black gets shot in the face out of nowhere. How do you defend against that? For the people that want to stand up for the police, there was nothing happening. There was no advance. There was no push and shove. People literally standing in front of the police and all were peaceful. And then boom. So after an hour of that, they finally call it a riot. They never give proper evacuation orders. It seems like it needs to be investigated by some, real professionals. We've done the best we can and try to submit all this stuff for court cases. But, the judges are as biased as the public and as biased as the politicians. And we're not getting any support from our side. There are politicians that know what we know about the deaths and everything that really haven't done anything about it. So it just kind of brings you to the position of it's us against them, unfortunately. And, us is all the people on both sides, and them is the powers that be, the government, the representatives that don't represent us. And that's a real scary place, I think, for everyone. Even if you don't know you're there, I think it's scary. And I hope more people will wake up to that reality, brother.
So let's talk about the documentaries you've made. You've got now your 3rd one in the can, it sounds like, and you've got 2 of them released. Is that correct?
Yeah, the first one was called Writing History, RIGHTING, the journalistic battle of January 6th, which it is. It's still a journalistic battle. It's who's going to tell what story and who's going to get them to believe it. So it's the propaganda war in a lot of ways. But that battle continues. So Writing History was the first, 37 minutes long. It's not very bad. And then the second was called Bloody Hill. And it's basically 3 people's opinions of the day and explanations of how January 6th is comparable to the 7 abominations in the Bible, lying and killing and all. So it's a really interesting, but it gives you facts about the select committee and events of the day. And Trennis Evans as well gives his personal experience as a defendant and what he's experienced with the raids from the FBI on his home and child, holding his son at gunpoint stuff. And, we see more and more of that. The third one, the J6, A True Timeline, is really going to be kind of like both of them combined. But the difference is we've had 2.5 years of collection and research, investigation. So we figured out who instigated, what their names are. We got their body camera to prove it. We've got everything that people really need to see. And to me, it's a really huge test, brother, to see who's willing to believe the truth that they see with their own eyes. And I know it's not a lot because we see this every day. We put videos out every day that show facts, show truth, and people still just try to destroy, that's what you get kind of stuff. And they don't have any idea what they're talking about, but they've been so programmed to react that they can't listen,
Why do you think people are so emotionally connected to that belief they grabbed on January 6th?
It's hard to say. I know a lot of it just goes back to Trump. You either love him or you hate him. And unfortunately, he's just another him. In a couple of years, it'll be somebody else. And a couple of years ago, it was somebody else. And, he's just a politician. And I tell everybody all the time, like, oh, you Trumpers and you Kool-Aid drinkers and all that. Like, yeah, I voted for him twice. But you know what? I don't own a Trump shirt. I don't own a Trump hat. I don't worship the man. I don't care about that. He's the president. He's done a great job with what he could do. And I voted for him again because I like the policies. I like what he did for the prison system. I like what he was doing at the border. I liked a lot of stuff. I didn't like everything. I didn't like Operation Warp Speed. I don't like a lot of the silence from him about January 6th when I feel like he could have offered J6ers more help. But at the same time, he did tell people in that CNN interview, these are great people and they're being treated like hell. So I want people to understand that they deserve your support and your respect. He said so himself. So let's be sure and get that connection made. And listen, Kyle, I'll tell you, we've tried to be proactive from day one. I did a podcast on January 8th. As soon as I got home, it's a 24-hour drive. So I got home and jumped on a podcast. I want to tell my friend from the UK everything I witnessed, from the FBI to Antifa to the police actions and brutalities, the deaths that we were aware of already. Man, I cried on the thing. It was crazy. But I wasn't wrong about one single thing I said. And I'm telling you, 2.5 years later to look back on that and go, wow, how do we already know everything that was going on? And why is it taking 2.5 years and people still don't get it? But from day one, man, I've tried to be proactive for the people. We started the Stop Hate Department of Defense so that people can have a portal with all the give, send, goes for all these people they can support. We've got calls to action at stophate.com/J6 from prayer groups to letter writing to congressmen to Sing for Freedom to free download. There's 20 different calls to action. Whatever your gift is, jump in there and grab something and help us out. And, providing the tools to do the job. I know you know how important it is to have the right tools for the job. And we've just tried to be proactive in that. As a carpenter, I want the best saw so I can do the best cuts. And some of this stuff is like the free downloads. We've got posters and banners and things that people can order from their own print shop. They're free. I mean, we provide all this, just like our movies, the documentaries, the articles. I've paid for everything out of my pocket as best I can. We get very little help, and it's greatly appreciated. But I haven't really asked for help for us because I've been asking help for these J6ers. They're starving. Go to stophate.com and there's a little box that turns around. You'll see the next story. One of those is a death count article. And it talks about all the people who've died in car wrecks or suicides. You'll be amazed at when you see the body count surrounding, or associated with January 6th. People have no idea how many suicides we've had from people that cannot handle the weight of the federal government and the DOJ. You think Chauvin was bad for putting his knee. So that right there, 5 deaths. And there's an FBI story, and it just rotates around. And what were the police doing is a really good video that'll show you a lot of the brutality. But that right there, the death count article. And I'm telling you, just knowing that there's 16 people is too many, wouldn't you say? I mean, we know of 5, those. And that's all we've ever heard. Nobody's kept up. That's intentional. They don't want you to know how much pain and suffering has trickled down to these families and how it affects communities and churches and neighborhoods. We call it social terrorism because you can't not only bank anymore or use anything electronic, but you lose your life, you lose your job, you lose your friends because nobody understands.
Yep, there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of hatred. I guess Stop Hate is as good as any name for what's going on there because it does feel like it's hate drawn. And it does feel like there's an awful lot of there's a lot of negativity surrounding all of this thing. The one thing I see a lot too is that you get called grifter. Is that one of your things that you get hit with?
Yeah, I don't so much. I know a lot of the people do. I'm very super transparent, and anybody that goes on the website can see that I'm a pass-through portal. We don't touch the money. We don't collect it and divvy it out. If I put somebody's link on there, it goes straight to them. So I've never really I'm not the money guy. I'm going in the hole big time for doing this stuff myself. So
that's the thing that's so true about everybody, I think, that's involved in that. I mean, well, actually not that. There are a lot of scams out there that are taking advantage of this.
There are. And look, we sell T-shirts and stuff. I don't push them. We sell mugs and coffee cups and stuff. I just don't push it. You know, if I'm going to be on a show, people can't take 2 calls to action, man. They just can't. You know, if I said, hey, support these prisoners and support me, they're going to pick one. So when I go out, I say, support these prisoners and their families. They need it, man, so bad.
Yeah, they're in bad shape. All right, you've talked a little bit about the websites. Go ahead and hit them again if you would, and plug those socials where people can follow and see your calls to action. And obviously, they'll see the free documentaries that you guys have put out there. A lot of the work that you've done into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Please, and share them. That's my biggest thing. If you people can get on there and just share. We've done a lot of the legwork. We've provided the tools, but stophate.com, and then of course stophate.com/J6, the J6 tab, is really what has the calls to action that you can help us share. The different groups and supporters that are really involved in the mission. And these are things, everybody has a gift. Everybody has a specialty. Just pick what yours is and adopt some people. We're about to do the toy drive again for the children. We raised $53,000 last year through Patriot Mail Project. So get involved with these kids. If nothing else, man, don't blame the children. I don't care which side you're on. These kids are suffering horribly. Imagine Joe Biggs' daughter, you know, the Purple Heart guy that started fighting because of 9/11, and he's in prison for 17 years. He wants nothing more than to just take his girl to school and give her a hug. I mean, and he can't. It's not going to happen until she's grown if he stays in there. People don't understand the depravity that these people, and it's sad, man. It's torturous. And listen, if you look up terrorism in the dictionary, I got to go here. Terrorism, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians for political aims. That's the definition of our government. That's what they've done to other communities for decades. That's what they're doing to us now. It's time that we all get together and see what it's about to fix it, but peacefully. You know, we never advocate violence or anything, but this is the real place that we live, folks, and I don't think that everybody can fully appreciate it until it affects them. But when it does, it's too late. You know, when they come kick your door in, you're in jail. You can't prepare for that anymore, and your family can't. And, you know, the FBI has been in my house 5 times. I've talked to him 3 of those times, and I'm not scared. I'm not hiding, but I'm also not supposed to talk to him. And I find that very difficult because I've done nothing wrong. I'm extremely honest. I have clear evidence. And the last guys that came to my house, I even showed them the movie trailer for it was really fun.
How was that received?
You know, they asked me, they said, well, what do you do with this? Do you put it on YouTube? I said, no, man, are you kidding me? YouTube won't let. They censor us. And they said, well, even this? I was like, I really felt sorry for those guys because they were so not in the know. And I said, hey, can I get a business card from you? They're like, yeah, we really don't do business cards and stuff. They end up in the bathroom. I said, well, that's funny. The last FBI that was at my house gave me a business card.
I got a box full of my business cards from each one of my offices that I haven't handed out yet. I got all kinds of business cards. That's nonsense.
Well, he said that they don't hand them out. And I said, well, the last guy did. He said, what? The FBI's been here before? I said, dude, the FBI's been here 4 times. That's not in your file. You're coming over here green. You don't even know who I am. You don't know I testified in 3 of these cases, that I work with all the lawyers, that I do all this video stuff, that I put out. Doc, you don't know who I am? What, are you just going to come shoot me and figure that out later? That's kind of the way it makes you feel. And like they're setting you up when they're asking you, like, are you in a militia? No. Do you own guns? Yeah, everybody in Texas owns guns, dude. What are you talking from BB guns up? What do you want? What are you doing? Do you know where the judge lives? Why would I care where the judge lives? No, I'm not after anybody. I'm not that guy. I speak truth, and that scares you, and I'm okay with that. But don't come over here and shoot me and my family and my house and my dog and all that stuff just because you're an idiot and you don't do your homework. See, that's where I have a disconnect. And I felt sorry for these guys. They looked completely stupid because they didn't know anything about anything. So I recorded the second half of that interview. I posted it on our social media. All our social media stuff's at stophate.com/follow us. You can find everywhere from, you know, Twitter down the line. So we try to put this information out for everybody, Kyle. We just need help, you know, sharing it and getting the truth to a bigger audience. And anybody that can help with that is a dear friend of ours.
I appreciate all that. You know what's really interesting about terrorists that I've always noticed?
What's that?
They always claim responsibility for their actions.
Wow.
Think about how proud DOJ is what they're doing right now. They are acting like terrorists. I will say it straight up, and I am someone who used to take that paycheck. There's something real sad about how little these guys know about it. It's called the banality of evil for most people. It's when you just put your head down and go to work every day and you don't look around and say, what am I being asked to do? And is this thing moral? Is it ethical? Is it legal? And if it's not, if it's illegal, immoral, or unethical, and you're not asking those questions, you're part of the terrorists, man. There's a lot of people there in the FBI that are decent human beings that are participating in a very, very banal evil because they do not know. They do not know what they are doing, and they do not have any awareness, and they'd never seen this footage, and they don't even know who you are. They don't know who anybody is. They just go out there. As they used to teach the guys in Quantico, apparently, because I used to get these new kids coming out, they would say, "Your name came across my desk. That's why I'm here to talk to you." It's like, is just a conveyor belt? You just pick off names? What the hell are you talking about? You didn't do the background? I would go and dig into anybody I want to talk to. I want to know who I'm talking to. What is their background? Do they have a criminal history? Do they own a gun? They have a gun permit. Are they someone that has been in the news? Are there any news articles? It's really easy. You just tell one of the intel analysts. That's what they do for a living. You say, hey, go give me background on this guy.
Well, it's really funny.
Or a targeting package is what they would call it if it was more serious.
Yeah, well, I imagine I have a couple of those packages. I don't know how that works. But, it's funny because I'm still looking for those Trumpers or whatever that had the plan. I can tell you.
There's got to be a blueprint on somebody's wall, right? Like with all the strings.
Yeah, they got the big mouths, man. You think they could keep this quiet for 2.5 years? Yeah, I really had the plan. It was me. I did all that stuff. I haven't heard from those people yet, and nobody else has. So, as far as the plan, I know that started when President Trump said, let's march down there. Everything after that, after the fight started, it's really hard to tell what happened. I know that people defended themselves. I know I'm proud of the J6ers for not reacting worse. It could have been horrible death numbers is the way I always say. And it could have, man. We could have killed all those police. We could have burned down the building. We could have took home paperweights. We could have destroyed the whole place. But, when we left, we didn't tear up things on the way home. We didn't tear up our homes when we got there. We didn't run. The FBI is not catching people all over the world. They're catching them at home because that's where they are, because they're not scared, because they're not running, because they know they didn't do anything wrong. And they're amazed when they come knock on the door anyway and give the complimentary flash bang, bring the family out, hold them at gunpoint at 6 a.m. And it's just mind-boggling why the government is trying to create terrorists by these children that miss their parents and these people that are put in jail, for wrong reasons. And that's how you make the citizens really, really mad. And then who are they going to try to take it out on? We don't know. We don't want that. But is that something that's going to be fought against each other, or are they going to get the point of who's doing this to both sides and be angry with the government and demand a change?
I guess we will see. It is an ugly time right now, and I wish safety for those. I wish discernment too. I hope we all pray for discernment for those that are in positions of power like this. Right?
That's
really
huge right now. It is.
Hey, David, thanks for joining me this morning. Thanks for sitting with us and talking, sharing the message. Thanks for what you do, fighting hate. I think it's a great message, and folks, you can follow him. We'll have all the links in the description of the show. If you're listening on the audio or the video, you can find that and follow him on Twitter and all those kind of places.
Hey, Kyle, God bless you, brother. Keep you safe as well, man. I appreciate all you've done, and it's been great to get to know you, man.
Yeah, likewise. I look forward to seeing you more on Twitter Spaces. I know we'll do it again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right, buddy. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the Kyle Seraphin Show. We are streamed live from Liberty Hill, Texas. If you are a member of one of the lunatics out there that is trying to hunt down me and my family, I advise you against coming to Liberty Hill, Texas. We got cemeteries here, too. It's a good hill to die on. If you choose to, it will be you. Do not threaten my wife or family, as I keep seeing people do on social media. That is just a no-go. The Seraphin family are not soft targets. We are aggressive, and we defend ourselves in that way. I don't know why I need to say that, but that needed to be done. People are out there doxing my wife and coming after it. So not your guy, man. I'm not your guy. And also, you'll see we're going to be putting out some clips today on our social media talking about the open carry rallies that are going on in Albuquerque. It is happening at 2 p.m. in Albuquerque, so expect that. That's 2 p.m. Mountain Time. You'll expect them 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. going onward in the East Coast. We're going to start putting some of these videos. We had Ben Luna on yesterday. He's going to take some ground footage for us. And we are pro carry. Generally speaking, we are pro concealed carry. This is my concealed carry piece that I just picked up today. It's another one. I've been carrying a Glock for a long time. Folks, carry your weapons. Take care of yourselves. You are your own first responder. All right, let's do some thank yous here. We want to say thanks to all of our super chats that came in today. The Rumble rants, especially the last one that I saw up here from Rusty Poe, which said, "Thanks for all you're doing, Kyle. Smash the like button. Please do. Please like these videos. Please share these videos. And we want to say thanks for all of the 5-star reviews we get on Apple. Here's one of them today. This is from 100% not at Real Steve Friend. This was definitely not Real Steve Friend writing this review. It says 5 stars for Friendly Friday. Absolutely love Friendly Fridays. At Real Steve Friend offers fascinating perspectives, substantive insight, and side-splitting humor to the podcast. He's not hard on the eyes either. At Real Steve Friend is totally the face of the Suspendables franchise. Kyle is okay too. Again, that's written by 100% not at Real Steve Friend. I know our buddy Steve did not write that. He told me he didn't. he said he definitely needed that read on the podcast, but that he didn't write it. So there you go, folks. Put your own up. We'll even read silly things from our friends up there. If you want to leave us a funny message and a 5-star review, we do appreciate it. It does help the podcast grow. We're almost at 700, and our goal is 1,000 by the end of the year. I think we're going to get there. Just like we topped 100,000 followers on Twitter. It's a little middle finger to the FBI that we are getting this platform and this reach, and so many of you guys are responding to it. We love it that you guys are doing it. Share it on all the places you got, and we want to say thanks to Ryan Matta. I should absolutely say that. Ryan Matta, at Ryan Matta Media, M-A-T-T-A. Ryan's a fantastic guy. You can see his show on LFA TV. There he is. He's got a Patriot Tumblr sitting next to him. He is out there on the active real-time research, bringing us the videos we need and queuing this thing up, making it all run smoothly, even solving the VPN problem in the background. So thanks so much, y'all, for
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.